Fun fact, all of these images were generated by Midjourney, AI generated images here. So tell us, how are you joining the session today? What are you bringing with you today? Are you all smiles, overwhelmed, a little bit hungry? I know I'm always hungry. Silly, focused, ready, just chilling? Just tell us what you're bringing to the session. And I've made this one anonymous, so don't feel self-conscious when picking things there. All right. Let's see, we've got about 4 of us answered. Let's get some energy in this room. Let's get some music going while we're doing that. There we go. Tell us in the chat where you're joining from too. Much better. Thanks, Andrew. All right, we've got Istanbul, Copenhagen. I'm from Texas, Costa Rica. I'm a little jealous there. All right, if you're just joining us, make sure you give a little vote on how you're joining today. We've got about 3 people chilling, which is great. Stockholm, South Africa. Fantastic. All right, so it looks like we've got everyone voted there. We need a little fade out on the new music player, Anna Maria, so that it's not so abrupt when I pause the music.
We're working on something, but I can't share more. It's coming.
Okay. You heard it first here, and you didn't actually hear it. So here's our poll. It looks like we're mostly chilling here, and then we'll go ahead, and I'm gonna do a little intro here of what we're gonna do today, and then we'll jump right in. All right, so we are so happy to have Shyvee here this morning. Well, I guess it's not morning for everyone. Where's it morning for people? I'm morning here. I'm 11 a.m. We've got another morning. All right, and she's such a respected thought leader in the digital transformation and product management space. So we're really happy to have her here this morning. She's worked across various industries. The one that stood out to me here, Disney Plus, one of my favorites. She's worked with some great clients, YMCA, VMWare. And right now she's a product manager, at LinkedIn and instructor at LinkedIn Learning. So we're really excited to see what she brings to us today with product market fit. And she's known for her ability to guide individuals and teams in their careers and help them find meaning in their work. I know we're all looking for that. And so has strong ties to and commitment to mentorship and coaching. And we're just really excited to see what she has to bring to us today. Who else is excited? Use your emojis here. If you haven't used Viber before, we got our little react buttons over on the side there. There we go. If on your left-hand side, you just roll over, or there's some shortcuts. I think 6 is one of my favorites there. And just go ahead and use your emojis throughout this session. And so we have these butter mixtures now, twice a month now, Anna Maria? And so we're really excited to start seeing everyone at these as we roll out the new ones for 20. Are we ready to pass it over to, have we worked out the slide?
We'll roll with the punches.
Well, we're gonna go with it. We're gonna go with it.
And like true facilitators.
All right, fantastic.
Can you all hear me? Awesome, cool. This is a really cool platform, by the way. I heard about Butter, I think, from the website. Look at the fun, sort of visuals and the vibe, but it's really cool to experience it firsthand. So thank you so much. And yes, it's my apology because I don't want it to do dry run. I've done a lot of talks like this, and I was just like, let's just roll with it. And it's I wanted to say that given that it's a small enough audience, I wanted to make it interactive and useful to you all. So yes, I prepare a set of presentations, but if you have any questions specific to you that you'd like to know related to finding product market fit, I welcome you to either raise your hand or drop in the chats what question you have for me. Amanda, are we sorry, your name is not
Anne Maria.
Anne Maria.
Anna, yes.
Like how are you sharing screen? Am I
yes,
sharing
there
screen?
we go. So I pulled this, but
There
let me
we
just
go.
close. Let me close it and give you the start, Shyvee. And then if you go to Toolbox
Okay,
to the right side, you will find it under PDF presentation. If you click on it, then you'll have full control over it. So this is it.
Pretty cool.
There we go.
Great. So let's get started. Again, any point in the presentation, anything that resonates with you, does not resonate with you, or you have questions, please drop them in the chat. But I want to start with today's presentation from Mark and Anderson, right? The A16Z VC, someone who invested in Airbnb, Facebook early in the days, arguably one of the best VC in the Valley, right, in the world. He mentioned that finding product market fit is literally the only thing that matters. So that's how important it is, right? Like without product market fit, even if you grow, you're going to come back and fail in building this liquid bucket. So it's a very important concept. And I spent a lot of time thinking about it because a lot of my work at LinkedIn, as Rachel was introducing myself, I'm a product manager at LinkedIn. The sweet spot I work at for LinkedIn a lot of times is building 0 to 1 product, or we call it new venture bets within a very established company, right? LinkedIn has been there for over, I think it was last year, 19 years. It's almost like a teenager going to college. But you're still trying to innovate, right? Like you don't stop. So here are some of the just stats and things that I work on and some of the organizations I work with. But most importantly, I think I want today's session to be about you, right? Like, what are you hoping to learn? Maybe if we can spend a minute or two, people just type in the chat, like what questions you have related to this topic. Are you completely new to finding product market fit? Or are you already working on some product that you're looking to, figure out, do I have product market fit? So what spectrum are you in terms of your survey experience, your, what you like to know? By the way, all the icons here, about people, like the avatar, it's super cute. This is really cool.
I absolutely love it how you live as you go. This is really fun to see.
Can product market fit used for services? Absolutely. Even when I'm creating content, I call it content audience fit. Content then becomes my product, right? Switching from enterprise to SaaS be the first thing that needs to change. The use of online tools for finding product market fit. All right, lots about tools. Connection to problem solution fit. I think problem solution fit might just be sort of the first step of thinking about product market fit, because there's we can go into that, but you need to first make sure you build the right product, then you need to make sure you find the right sort of channel to grow that product, and that requires another fit. And Water, I think most of our today's session will probably be around the first phase of how do you find the right problem and the right problem to solve, and how do you know the solution solves it. Can fit change over time? Absolutely. Different ways to conduct different methods for research. All right, adding to your skill set. Absolutely. There's one about hypothesis testing, which I really love. Okay, cool. So again, at any point, if I didn't address any of this question or you want to double click, feel free to do so. Let's leave enough time at the end to also ask questions. So today, the focus, is going to be more around understanding what it is. So let's level set what I mean by product market fit. What are some of the groundworks that needs to be done in order to product market fit? I think that's related to some of the design research methods, how you draft a strategy, how do you look for, inspirations for validation, how to do it cheap and do it fast, I think is what I like to call. And then welcome, Carlos. No problem with the delay. And then last but not least, let's talk about value props and how to win. What will be a winning sort of first product that you want to launch, and then how do you know you achieve it, right? So let's dive into it. And if you have any question, again, feel free to drop them in the chat. And I also like to call out, like I said, like always discover new things as I go. I like how the emoji jumps out. That's sort of like a delight, that makes it more fun. So, and thanks for everybody reacting right now. It's very fun. Wow, look at that. You guys should just like put that in like your promotion video, right? All right. So how do I have true product market fit? The emphasis here is true. All right. So there's 3 elements to it, and I want to clarify some of the misconceptions around the 3 elements. First, is about desirability, right? People need to want the product that you produce. Second, you can actually keep those people from coming back so that they don't just come back once and they're like, oh, this is cool, and then like they forget about it. The third piece, obviously, is the business viability, right? Like you need to actually be able to make money from it. For a long time, I would say, a lot of the internet companies, like Reddit or like, for a long time, Amazon wasn't even making money until, they have AWS. So people always said like, oh, VC is going to fund, whatever, if it's a good product, and they'll figure out a profitability angle. But I think it's always a good practice to kind of figure out model, right? Like some of you mentioned, like B2B SaaS, that you should start with like, hey, here's our profit model and how we want to go and validate if that's working. Something that I do want to caveat out is this first 2 bubbles, because if you're going for a product that is so cool and so delightful, that's actually sort of a too aspirational goal, because people's expectation of a product is always going to raise. So here, achieving product market fit doesn't mean that you have to find like the perfect, the best, like people gonna love you and rave about your product. Those are great size. But the minimum, let's say those are the ceiling, then what's the floor? The floor is actually your product's good enough that people that people have a need to come back. That's the minimum you need to get to, right? For a sustained growth versus trying to build a very desirable product, because people's expectations going to keep raising. So make sure, how do you find that balance of like good enough a product that people will come back, and then you can start to continue to iterate and build better product from it. And thanks, Rachel, for sharing the links. All right. So some of the basic principles of finding product market fit. First, I want to say product market fit is not a binary. It's not like, hey, I achieve it, I'm not achieve it, right? It's a lot of times this gradual journey that it goes a little up and down, a little, but overall trending upwards. So it's less of a big bang event. It's more of a gradual increased confidence over time. And then the key is to be able to achieve sustained growth. And in a moment, I'll mention what that means. But usually that means when you map out your cohort retention chart, you're going to get like some business only need 10% of people returning to be able to sustain. Some business needs like 40% returning to be able to sustain. So that the range is pretty big, depending on the type of business you are and the average revenue from each customer that they come back, right, to purchase with you. The goal here is you don't want to build a liquid bucket. A lot of people like, build a product, launch it, and then they focus on grow, right? Getting more and more user to come in. But the least thing you want is you grow a bunch of people and then very few people stay. Then you're just burning out and churning out your marketing dollars, right? So you want to like actually start with a soft launch where you can, or later I'll mention how you can do like validate quickly, whether a product is going to work or not without having to invest a bunch of money and resources and effort. You want to get some feedback first before you like start to grow. So growth comes after you find product market fit. And product market fit actually takes time. Some of the shocking stats that I read from Lenny's post about some of the research he did, about half of the company startups, I would say, found product market fit let's say immediately or within 6 months of launch. But another half spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to make it work, right? And even for Lyft or like, ride sharing business, if it's location specific, you might find product market fit in one market, but then that playbook might or might not apply for another market. So there's like different ways to think about it. So, finding product market fit sometimes can take time. Like in the case of Thumbtack, took them five years, right? That's a long time to iterate. But a lot of company, I think, achieve most of their product market fit within like the first year or the 18 months. So think about, you have a hypothesis that you want to validate, and then you can figure out, how to get there. So have a vision, but like continue to iterate and like trying to get closer to that. So with that in mind, I think it's really helpful to know that, sometimes you need the patient, right? But now let's talk about the process of how can I get smart about it? How can I short circuit, this 12 to 18 months journey into something that's more sort of like quicker, faster, cheaper, does not require like tons of investment. So some of the questions we like to ask, at least at LinkedIn, this is not a LinkedIn specific framework. I think it's actually a management framework, either from Bain and Company, a consultancy, like a top consultancy, or from Harvard Business School, maybe a combo of both. The question they like to ask are just like, anytime when you build a product, you have to have really high conviction of the 3 questions. First question, where do we play, right? That means, who are you solving for? What problem you're trying to solve? And then why are you as a product, why is your product or your company uniquely positioned to solve it? So that involves quite a bit of understanding of like who the customer is, what exactly, in a very descriptive, very clear turn, describing the problem and know how big, how important this problem is. And then is there anyone else that's already solving that problem? And why are you better suited to solve that problem? Right? Can you answer out of it in like a sentence or 2 with like clarity, right? People will get it. That's the first check mark. The second question we like to ask usually is like, well, how do we win if we think we're going to play in that space, right? Why us? Why do you think that, what do we need to believe to be true for us to win? Like it's a pretty cool software, right? Like, for teams and collaboration. Well, what else is out there? There's Zoom. There's, like Hopin, there's maybe a couple other like Teams, right? For example. So how are we better? How is Butter better than any other tools, or Miro, or like screen sharing with Miro and stuff like that, right? Like mapping it out, like what kind of teams would be most beneficial? What kind of settings would be most beneficial for this product? And how much value differentiation does it bring in compared to whatever the incumbents in the market, right? Be able to map that out. Later, there's like a grid framework that I like to use, but something to keep in mind as you think through this question. And then last but not least, how do you know if we won, right? So this includes both defining very concrete metrics, but also any early signal that you can get. So it's both a qualitative measure and a quantitative measure, in the sense of like, depending on the stage of your product, right? Like if you're just early first iteration, what you need is probably not like a whole funnel metric, right? You need some early signal. Are people even signing up? Like if you have a pre-order page or like a pre-sign up waitlist page, are they interested enough to, put down their email, right? If you do a Kickstarter campaign, for example, just to see how much demand, are people willing to put down their money? Because all your friends, or even user you survey, they might want to make you feel better, so that they say, oh yeah, this is a cool concept, but how cool can that be translated into the actual email address to register? Or even better, how much are they willing to bet their money, right? People vote for where their money stands. So the earlier you can get those signal through existing tools, the better. So sometimes I really encourage people to fake a campaign on Kickstarter or one of those, fundraising platform, just so that you can collect how many people actually, pay you money for it, right? Before you build out the entire thing, so that you kind of get a sense of like, okay, I sent out 500 emails to all my friends or potential customer. Here's the 10 or 5 that actually pay, $100 to pre-order or something like that. So you get like a really good sense of like how good your product is. Later on, we have a slide dedicated to talk about that, but I just want to bring some of that notion up front on like, how do you think smart about, how you're planning to measure success. And yes, playing to win is a good book, sort of that having that I think it was a 7-step process, but here is sort of streamlined it into 3, but you can see a lot of sub questions within each as well. So a pretty neat framework that most of LinkedIn's product gen or product doc try to answer those questions. Sometimes we add the 4th question, why now, to signal like urgency, right? Because product market fit sometimes require the right timing. If you're too early, too late in the process, wouldn't make sense. Now, the next framework, I think some of you, how many of you are aware of the job to be done framework? Because it's pretty well known at this point now, I think. Yeah, this is also another one that we like to ask ourselves a lot, right? The milkshake case study. If you just keep building different flavors of milkshake, sales might still be stagnant because you don't understand who is buying the milkshake and what do they use it for, right? So it's so obvious to think about milkshake at like different flavors, strawberry, Oreo, being all fancy. If you go to a Chinese, like a Taiwanese tea shop, you'll see there's like 50 different flavors on the board. But your sales still might, unless you have a killer flavor or something, but otherwise that's not solving the real problem. The real problem is understanding who comes in when to buy milkshake and why, right? And then Clayton Christensen, his group found out that 2 groups of distinct customers actually come in to buy a milkshake, right? One came in the morning around 10, by male, and they're late 30s to 40s, living in the Midwest. They're driving trucks to go to work. So why do they come in and buy a milkshake? That's their mid-morning, snack, right? They're trying to fight that hunger between, I wake up at 6 to start doing construction work, and now I'm driving around. I ate my breakfast at 6, but lunch is not until 12. Well, what do I do in between when I feel hungry? And all that stuff, right? So they come in to buy a milkshake because it's cleaner than eating a banana, for example. When you're driving a truck, you don't want to make your truck all smell banana-y, if that's even a word. But also you don't want to, let's say eat an energy bar and get your hands all like, dirty, or bagel or something like that, right? So the comparison set, the why us question is, hey, smoothie is sweet, right? It tastes well, it tastes good. It's very clean. Your hands can pull it up and down while you're driving a truck. So the problem you're trying to solve there is, you want to have this clean option that give them enough protein. So this like sugar high to keep them driving, not bored on the road. But they're maybe not too full that they can't really eat their lunch, right? So that's one problem to solve. And then the other group of customer that come in to buy milk is actually around 5 p.m. Is the dad bringing a kid, maybe 5 or 6 year old, yelling at the dad like, hey, I want to buy some milkshake. So what problem are you trying to solve? What's the job to be done there? It's a guilty dad that didn't spend enough time to play with the kid. But the kid is like crying, asking for sweet, but you don't want mom to know. And dinner is happening in an hour and a half. So how do you keep the kid happy and not make the mom feel like, what a dad are you? Like, you're so irresponsible getting all the sugar and, like that stuff, right? So what is the job to be done here as a milkshake company? Well, are there healthy, light, options that just keep you full enough so that you don't, you can still eat dinner. So mom might never know. And you have this special bonding moment between the dad and a young kid, right? So there's a lot of nuance, I think, that goes in to talk about how deep you need to think about your product. Not just, hey, I'm creating this milkshake company, but exactly who are the subsegments that you're solving for? And can you write their story in their lands from their language, right? I know that I just used up 21 minutes and I'm like, what, 30% into my presentation, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. So this is one framework that we use to understanding a problem space, so to break down that job to be done. We look at 4 different resources to think about how we want to understand the problem more holistically. First, we look at customer behavior, right? Both the data and the story. I think the story is actually more important. Even the data needs to support that story. Don't just tell me, oh, 50% of people choose this option or something. You need to be able to that, right? Oh, recently I'm building this job product, and people said like 40% customer asked to be able to share their applicant list. That's not enough. If you stay at that way as a request, you need to understand, well, under what circumstances they need to share that list of applicants. Why? What do they use it for? Is it because they raised this request as a solution to a problem, a bigger problem? Then you should really go tackle that problem. Then this request might not be needed anymore, right? So all the full context around building a story around that problem and having confidence in that story. And if people are hacking a solution, to solve a problem, then that's where you really need to focus on. That's a real product need. And obviously talking to your customer, understanding what's working, what's not working, experience firsthand. Again, coming back to that the most powerful framework for me is always building the story, the context of why someone comes in and use your product, under what circumstances, why. And then so any features that you want to add to your product, you should understand, like, what is the background story, right? Like, what bring them here? So how do I recommend people to get those answers? Workshops, sometimes not so much, because when you put people in a workshop, they might say things that they think you wanted to hear, or they might say things that make them look good. So the type of research I like to do, obviously, if you could, is observe them in their natural environment, right? But if that's hard to do, because sometimes I get it, like, you can't really shadow them, then doing research is helpful. But there's a lot of skills in how to do research right. You don't ask, for example, yesterday I was writing this research in filters, right? So the way how I would go about it is, instead of showing the filter and ask, hey, how would you use it? Or like, how do you like it? I would ask them about the problem that the filter is trying to solve. Let's say if you are a hiring platform, you're trying to identify who are the standout candidates. So without seeing any design, I would ask them, hey, what is today's process when you have 100 applicants in your pipeline? How do you go about quickly find out who's more, qualified than the other? Walk me through the step, like step by step. Maybe they show you the screen, they walk you through what they did, and then you take notes of it, right? And then sometimes you show them, okay, here's the 10 signals. How would you stack rank them? And then sometimes they stack rank, but it's helpful to double click on, like, why did you place this one over the other? How do you interpret this result? Because a lot of times you say, hey, years of experience in sales, or skill match, something like this. They might think of skill match as something else different than how you define skill match. So it's very important to kind of double click on, like, what they think, what they perceive, and build that total understanding. I think those are very, very important. So I know that we're up in time for the presentation, but I welcome a lot, like, questions. I'm gonna skip ahead a couple slides as well, so that we could, we could cover some of the basics.
We still got 23 minutes.
Yeah.
Shyvee, so we could still go and cover some more content that you think
good.
might be useful before moving to Q&A.
Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to 3 frameworks that I really like. The first is, how do you prioritize what features to build? And this is a very important chart. First, you need to understand how important is the user's need, right? If you're building a candy product, unless you are, like a sort of like a TikTok that, eventually you tackle like the boredom market and you do it so well. Most of the B2B SaaS framework, for example, companies, you need to focus on an important user need. How do you measure importance? Well, you ask them, you look at how pain. Are they feeling today without this feature? And then if you do add this feature, how much more do they gain? If you take it away, like how painful is it going to for them, right? And then the second, very important, is that how satisfied are they with the current alternative? This includes both the competitors, but also any duct tape solution that they put together, right? Like if they use Google Doc, for example, for something, for collaboration on like, for like one central place to link out all the document. If they think that's good enough, that means they're pretty satisfied with current solution without a Coda or Notion like, fancy page. I'm not saying those are not important. I'm just giving sort of a quick example of like what current alternative could be. Not necessarily a competitor that does exactly the same as you do, maybe in different ways, but even existing solutions, right? Like duct tape, like quick workarounds that they put together. So you need to be able to map all your features in this framework so that anything that's in the opportunity zone is worth pursuing. Anything in the competitive market, you're going to know that it might be really hard, right? So just keeping that in mind. And anything below might not worth going after. So you need to have that clarity on like how you prioritize needs. I love this framework from the Lean Startup Playbook, Dan Olson, who I also interview on my show. So I love how he sort of prioritized that. And then the other thing, that's the other framework, again, coming from the sort of lean manufacturing, is understanding, well, what's the importance or what's the framework for must-haves, performance benefits, and delighter. Must-have meaning, hey, without this, you can't even, function. Like, for example, if you're an Uber app back in the days, you need to be able to take people from one place to another. So must-have is just like, basic stuff, ordering, going from place A to place B, right? But performance benefit means your value prop. Can you get people going somewhere faster, right? Can you go there cheaper? Can you go there safer? Can you go there in a nicer environment than a taxi? When Uber first started, it was a black car, right? So all of those benefits are considered as performance benefits. They are nice to have. And then delighters are like little icing on the cake that makes you like, wow, that's so cool. So let's do a poll. If you're creating a MVP out there in the market, what do you think is the formula for a winning MVP combo? What do you need to have to win at the minimum? All the must-haves, performance benefits. I like Rachel skipping ahead for what I'm going to present next.
I didn't know. Sorry, that's what I always answer.
No worries. Okay, so for those who type, performance benefits, the tricky thing is how many do you need? Because it's going to be more and more expensive the more you add, right? So how many do you need? And yes, if you only have must-haves and you have no performance benefit, are people going to switch to you? Or they're just going to stick with what they have today? Right? How are you differentiating? You're not different than anyone if you only have must-haves. So the winning combo is actually having all the must-haves. There are not that many must-have, by the way, true must-haves, but have at least one performance benefit so that you can differentiate. And then ideally, the more the better, but the more expensive, you want your MVP to be. So when Adobe X, first came out, it was mainly one performance benefit. So similar for Uber, right? You need to be able to map out. So this framework, this grid is really, really powerful. You need to map out all your existing sort of alternatives, taxis, car services, Uber, maybe public transportation, but that's a little far-fetched, might not worth putting it here. List down all your customer benefit in form of what's must have, like what's the most basic. And then performance benefits are the value prop, right? Like, are you doing it faster, cheaper, safer, nicer? That's sort of all you can think of for, at the first stage for the customer needs, right? And then mapping out how well are each one of this satisfied, and then where you are in the spectrum. The lighter are nice to have, right? Like, if you don't have any performance benefit, it's not gonna. So coming back to this slide, the way to understand it is like, you need to have must have, but the more you have, like, even if you have more, users are not going to be more satisfied. They'll just be neutral because they expect you to have must haves. The more performance benefits you have, the more they're going to be happier, right? But it's also more expensive to build. Now, the lighter, if you don't have them, people are be like, yeah, whatever. But the more you start to have after you have all your must-haves, then that's where the wow effects come into be. So you can't say, I don't have a performance benefit yet, and then I have a delighter. That's not going to help until you have certain level of performance, right? So the sequence for, how to prioritize, to think about, Uber doesn't make you feel safer. Yeah, but like Uber has mechanisms to try to prevent doing that, right? So that's what they were trying to emphasize in their initial value prop. I wanted to open the floor for questions more, so I will just touch upon one more topic, and then I know, Rachel, you mentioned about the 4 risk. I want to quickly touch upon that as well. But I mentioned a little earlier how to measure success. How do we know we won? Well, I emphasize a lot actually on pre-market, because you're going to save a lot of money if you get a lot of signal up front. But you need to be smart about how you're getting those signals. A lot of times as PMs, founders, we tend to feed our ego. So we go to our friends or we go to some customer and then we ask, hey, what do you think? Do you like this feature? Or we don't even show them design. We say, hey, we build this tool for you. Would you like it? Sure. Why do I ever say no? The more you show me, the better, right? There's no stake in me saying, great, yeah, let's do it. So you need to create some stake, meaning like build a fake pre-order page. See if people actually put down money. And you need to design your survey or research in a way that doesn't make people feel like 2 things. Either they need to say things that makes you happy and you hear those things because it fits your ego, or they want to say things that make them look good. Like, hey, I'm this is how I work, but in reality, they do something else, right? So there's research methods to kind of like, help you reduce those biases, those cognitive biases. And there's books around it, and I highly encourage folks to learn some of those techniques. And then if you can create any sort of mechanism to increase the stake, like if they're willing to pay $10, $15 or something, or put down their email to stay in touch. Email, I feel like, is still too low of a stake. Then you can really start to measure the funnel and how much are people really care about what you're building, right? Measure real excitement. Now, post-launch, after you have done some work, I like the retention framework, right? Like, you need to know, hey, is it dropping to 10% and then stay there? And then kind of reverse engineer, well, if I have 10% of users staying over time, how much do they pay me, right? And what's the lifetime value? You can then model your business model, and you can know, like, do I need 20% people staying? Do I need 30% staying? I think Lenny has a research article where he lays out of different categories: marketplaces, e-commerce, SaaS, what type of retention rate you need. So go research, retention curve or retention rate, Reforge, or Lenny. You should be able to find that article. I know Superhuman or Sean Alice have this other framework, which is you survey your user base, let's say more than 150 of them. If 40% of your users said, hey, if this product disappeared tomorrow, I'll be very disappointed. Again, 5-point scale. There's the neutral, disappointed, and very disappointed. So they need to be in that last, scale to know that you have sort of achieved a product market fit. Obviously, if you're seeing organic growth, if you're seeing that you spend less money acquiring people, you're not building a liquid bucket. I think all the remaining signal is trying to tell you you're not building a liquid bucket. And that's pretty important. And one final thing concluded on this exercise that I really like to do. It's what I call hypothesis testing or assumptions testing. It's a pre-modern, meaning it hasn't happened yet, right? And then, so Marty Kagan has this 4 big product risk. I actually like to think of it like 5. So the first one is, are we creating valuable product for the customer? Do they even care? Second, within usability, I think there's 2 angles to it. How people discover your product. Like, you can't assume once you build, they will remember to know you, remember you, to come to you. So that discoverability, top of mind awareness is very important. How do you make them know? How do you make them come back? How can you test it, right? And then the actual usability, once they come to the app, do they use the right feature? Can they discover the right feature to use? Do they get confused by the product? That's another layer. I feel like discoverability is like sort of like more top of funnel, more important. And then obviously, can you build it visibly, cheap enough, viable enough that you make money? So an exercise that's really helpful for the team to do, and actually ChatGPT can probably help some of that if you fit the right prompt, is to break down. Okay, if I'm going to build a streaming service to stream live sport, well, what are all the different assumptions around all this 4 category can we play around? And then can we quickly validate how many of them can be true and false? It's worthwhile to spend, a week or a couple of days to just do that exercise, right? It doesn't cost much money. It costs a little bit of money, maybe go into the market to validate. But it's really helpful. It's a really great exercise because a lot of us take it for granted. We take the value for customer for granted. We take it that they will be able to find our platform if we're not already a well-known company, right? Like, we take a lot of things for granted. We build a lot of things to fit our ego. Those are, I feel like, 2 biggest sort of mistakes or, things that kind of get into the way. I'm going to pause here and maybe take some questions.
So I think we have some questions that we've pinned from the chat too. Anna Maria, I saw you were pinning some of them, so I don't know if we want to tackle some of those. If you'd like to use your cue over to the left-hand side there, you can also pop in if you have a question or a comment, and we'll hand you the mic. Don't feel like you can't do that. We want to hear you. So let's see, Anna Maria, what did you pin over here?
So on Mia's question, I know that there are a couple user interview one. I'll get to those. How do you identify assumptions? Okay, let me give you an example. Sports, streaming live sport. Okay, what are some assumptions around this 4 category? Let's start with, hey, do people come to your platform to watch live sport? I can tell you 90% of the time people assume that they will come to your platform to watch live sport. And it's probably not true. Why? Where are they going today to watch live sport, right? Why would they come to you? And now that once you build this product, how are you planning to get them? How can you be smart about it and like validate all of that, right? Second, think about once they come to your platform, would they bother enough to register an account? Would they bother enough to stay? Would they have fun, watching it? And can you actually have the live sport options? How many are they? There are so many different types, right? Golf, hockey, basketball, MF, like football. Like, how are you going to even get all those streaming rights and get it right and make sure, people have the right, right type of variety that they would come, and then they wanted to watch and stay. Like, what's keeping them? So in this case, it's a very important thing about what's the alternative, right? What do they do today? And what would make them to come into our platform? So those are just examples of what are some hidden assumptions that a lot of us take it for granted. Majority of product fail, I think, because we take it for granted. We think people will come. We think we're just going to pay some marketing dollar and they will come. And once they come, they will stay, right? Now talk about user interviews. I do like one-on-one user interview. I think you need 5 or 6 of those. Those are the best practice numbers for people in the similar categories, right? I think it's less about the technique. Less about the method, like is it one-on-one? Is it group? One-on-one sometimes is better because you can talk to them and avoid groupthink, right? Bigger groups sometimes tend to have groupthink, but there's ways that you can sort of tease that. So I think that the trick in conducting the best interview is around, let's start from, if it's one-on-one, how can you best ask them to describe the story behind their user problem, right? Without asking them, what do you think about my prototype? Is there some work that you can do pre-front to ask them, like, today, how do you watch live sports, right? For example, using this example, where do you go to watch? Do you watch by yourself? Do you watch with your friend? When was the last time you watched? So you don't just ask like, hypothetical scenario. You ask them to reflect back last time you watched a live sport. What was the trigger? Like, you just tired and you knew to watch? Is that a habit? Or like some friend told you something and then or you saw some ads somewhere and then, so tease out that entire story. That would be part 1 of the interview. Now, part 2, you can say, okay, we're thinking about building this platform. I want to show you some mocks. Maybe you can walk me through what you see. So instead of asking and explaining your product, again, a lot of us as founders, PMs, we feed our ego. We describe, hey, this is a product I want to build. Here's like the homepage. Here's this and that. Why? You lose your most important insight. What's people's first reaction? How many times, if you're not there when they visit your website in reality, right? You're not gonna say, this is the homepage, this is the problem I'm trying to solve. You're anchoring them. In psychology, you're anchoring them. You're telling them what you want them to know. But that's not the real feedback. The real feedback is what's their first reaction without you guiding them. So you're gonna show them and say, just describe, like anything that comes to their mind, like just say it. Don't make me feel good. Don't like, So create that safety, that container, that environment for them to say stuff, right? Like to tell you, I saw this logo. I don't know what it really means. I see this. I want to click into it. You will learn a lot of insight. 5 or 6 of those. That just be gold insight for everything you do. How do I integrate like customer discovery and product market fit? As early as possible, right? You would ideally, start with this assumptions test. Let's list out all the assumptions. And then let's create some really low fidelity mock without any code in the background. And then let's start those 5 interviews. But start with understanding how they're using the product today. And then what's their first reaction to your mock? And then you'll know how to tweak your mock, what part, like what makes sense, what not. What are the hypotheses that needs to be true for this to work? Yes, I encourage people. So here's the thing. I encourage people who are trained to run the interview themselves. So they don't ask questions like, this is the homepage. This is what we built. How do you like it? That kind of leading question. But I do encourage everybody to observe the interview. Right? To sit in the back, like engineering, for example, to sit in the background to understand, well, what does user say and what are their takeaway? And you would have a debrief meeting afterwards to say, here's what we learned. Different people might have different takeaways. And you would pay attention to the quiet voice in the room as well, right? So I do think the one who's conducting the interview needs to learn how to do it right, how to do it well, what kind of question to ask, when to ask, how to frame the question. If it's a group research, how do you create a mechanism where everybody get to speak up? It's how do you vote, or so that it's not the loud voice that dominate the conversation. So it takes some arts, takes some training, but everybody should at least observe, and then if you want to make the user feel more comfortable, you can all be behind a camera so that people don't feel like, oh, I'm one person talking to 10 people from your team, and everybody's, looking at me, right? So sometimes we might do that, in a moderated environment where we will record it and people watch it afterwards. So then, just so that you don't put too much pressure on the user. I know we're coming up on time. Maybe I'll take one last question before we wrap up.
I see some people typing there. So let's see.
I think, virtual really, doesn't really matter. Again, they walk you through their process, right? They share their screen. They tell you, oh, okay, I'm seeing this screen. Here's, what I'm going to do next. Or you ask them like, hey, this is screen. How would you go about finding out which sports to watch? And then they would tell you, they would walk you through that whole process. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, virtually is even better in that sense, right? Because they will tell you how they do it. Yeah. And then if there's no workshops, I mean, it's one-on-one interview. You invite people, you reach out to target customer. You can also build up a fake page, right? A website to collect payments. That's a really good product market fit to get like how many people are actually interested enough that they would willing to do that. Cool. We're coming up on time, so I do need a drop, but I hope this is helpful for folks. And you can follow me on LinkedIn. I do from time to time share, important tips about building products. And if you have any question that was not addressed, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you
All right.
taking the time today.
Thank you so much, Shyvee. This was awesome. Took
you.
lots of screenshots and notes. And speaking of screenshots, are we getting the presentation? Can we share it with the folks?
Sure, you can share the PDF.
PDF?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
We'll follow
Bye.
up. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the
Bye.
day.